gonna watch this show. Keep an eye on how many concurrents we have. And then unmute me. You gotta put the camera on me. Hey, professional show business. Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Comics Experience Graphic Novel of the Month Club, the Kids Edition, which is always kind of the best edition because kids are our future, aren't they? And kids comics are great too. This is April 2023, and we've got a really good book for you this month. One with a lot of action and some really kind of astoundingly photorealistic art. The book is Scurry. And it is by Mac Smith, and Mac Smith is right there. Hello, Mac.
Hey,
welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. How you doing today?
Pretty good, actually. It's nice.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So my first question's the same for every show because I really love this question, and it's why comics? Of all the things that you could be doing, and you clearly you have an art style that you could be doing things that are a lot more commercial and probably pay a whole lot better than comics, and yet you're doing them. Yeah. So why is that? What is it about the medium of comics that thrills you, that excites you, that gets your juices going?
Well, I've been into comics for a long time, especially as a kid, and I've kind of fallen out of it, and I had gotten into like illustration and concept art, but you know, with that kind of stuff, you're always dealing with lots of different people, like 10, 12 people, you know, it's like every sketch you make, you know, you have to get approval for everything. And I was getting really kind of frustrated. I was like, I want to get back to just doing my own work for myself. And it took me a while to figure out that, and I'd always had comics in the back of my head, you know, as what I wanted to do, because I like to tell more stories rather than just draw images, you know, and, so when I got the opportunity to do that, I just really I was like, I'm just going to do it the way I want to do it and just kind of have full creative control. So that's really, you know, I didn't really want to like write a book or anything. So I was like, I'm a little visual, half storytelling. So
yeah,
that's kind of what I
did. Did you read a lot of comics as a kid?
Yeah. I was kind of dating myself, but yeah, I was totally into the whole 90s comic boom, you know, as a kid, you know, and I'd always kind of kept up with it kind of in the background anytime just to kind of see what was going on. So yeah, I've always kind of been into it. I made some half-hearted attempts to kind of break into the comic industry when I was younger, like to go, you know, I said before, so like Marvel and DC and stuff, but they were like, no thanks.
Right. Did you go to school yourself to study comics or art in general?
No, not really. No, when I got out of high school, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. So I went to like the University of Tennessee, which is like a big state university, and they have a nice art program, but it's really tiny compared to the rest of the school. And there's no way to get into the classes when you're, you know, freshman or sophomore. So I didn't last very long. And I just ended up staying in my room, drawing and painting and learning how to do, you know, Photoshop, digital art, that sort of thing.
I see.
Learned it my own way.
That's neat. Well, we can talk about the technical stuff a little later in the show. Where did the idea for Scurry come from?
Uh, well, I had when I first decided to do a comic, I was kind of working on this other idea, but it was kind of this big, epic sci-fi fantasy thing, and I realized that I really had no idea how to do this. So I was still trying to figure out how to do a comic. And I was like, well, I had this other idea, this story about mice, and I was like, let me just try to do that first. And this ended up kind of expanding into this big epic storyline of its own with all these characters. So I guess that's just what I do, how I write them. But it was kind of based on, I wanted to kind of capture the mood of a lot of 80s, kind of dark 80s animated movies and fantasy movies that were they kind of had a certain mood or tone that was kind of, it's not like scary, but it's more like, I don't know, almost nostalgic or something, or kind of creepy, And I really wanted to. Those movies really stuck in my head as a kid when I was really young. Even though I couldn't remember the movies themselves, I always kind of had that feeling, and I wanted to kind of capture that whenever I started doing this.
Yeah, like what? Like The Secret of Nim or something, maybe.
That was a big one.
Yeah.
A lot of like the Jim Henson stuff, like Labyrinth or
right, sure.
Crystal.
Yeah.
But even like Disney was going into like kind of dark stuff with like Black Cauldron and
right. Yeah.
There's like the Rescuers and things like that too.
Yeah. I'm of the age where like my go probably would have been Watership Down. Yeah. Boy, that terrified me as a child. That was
yeah, I remember watching that one, and I just recently read the book. I'd never read the book before, but I read it like a couple of months ago. I was like, this is great. It really does hold up. I was pretty impressed.
Yeah.
And it's
the book is fantastic. The movie's good too. Well, the animated is good, but the animated is aged a little poorly, but the book is fantastic. So what part of the idea came first? Did you sort of figure out the mice character first, or where they were going, or I don't know. I'm always interested in how you build something like this.
That's a good question. I guess I started with. I mean, then the first kernel of the idea was just a mouse going into the forest, on an adventure, But then you kind of realize that mice are kind of at the bottom of the food chain. Everything is so much bigger than them, and always trying to eat them, and like everything is like a Godzilla to them. And I thought that was a pretty cool hook. And I was always trying to get that sense of scale in there as I was going, and I just kind of kept thinking about different scenarios in which, to kind of show that. And as the story kind of developed, I realized I needed more characters and a little more to kind of shoulder some of the storyline, So I ended up adding a lot of mice characters and things like that to kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of just.
Do you plot out the story like on a script first, or do you just keep sketchbooks where you know where it's going on your own? Because I've encountered artists who do it both ways.
I made a kind of rough script. It was just kind of for me. It was, I would say it was good enough for me. I kind of knew it in my head what it wanted to look like, and I just kind of wrote the dialogue, and then I just did thumbnails, and once I had that, it was just a matter of kind of just painting everything in. So I started generally with a rough script, but I didn't really script out the entire book. I did it in thirds. So the first 100 pages, I kind of scripted out, and I kind of had a vague idea of how I wanted it to go and how it ended. So it kind of took, this is like a 5-year project, so
sure.
There was a lot of changes and things as it went, and as I kind of learned how to make comics. So
yeah. Well, I mean, even from these first pages, I mean, you sure seem to have the sense of timing and space and the gifts that you need to have to make good comics. What was I was gonna ask you something in that. Do you work purely digitally, or do you are your thumbnails? Do you do them like in a notebook or something, or is everything digital? What's that part of the process like for you?
Mostly I just work. Well, the thumbnails I do in pencil usually just to get away from my desk. Being stuck at a computer all day is not too healthy. So I usually in the morning I'll just go to a coffee shop and plot out the pages on it with a pencil and paper. It's usually really rough and really ugly. But
Sure.
lately I've started doing more stuff by hand, just to have something physical and rather than just doing everything digitally. So I'll actually kind of draw out the characters now, and I'll scan those in. It's usually pretty rough, but I'll scan those in and then I'll just kind of digitally ink it and everything. But yeah, once it goes in the computer, it's all digital. So I work mostly in Photoshop.
Yeah. Do you find that that there's an advantage one way or the other, in terms of the looseness of your line, between physical, like the pencils and the digital inks, or not?
Yeah, I guess both kind of have their own little hang-ups and things. It's kind of hard to explain, but yeah, I would say with when I'm doing the pencil stuff, I have a tiny bit more control, I think, than with digital. But with painting, it's much easier for me to paint digitally than to ever try to do it physically. But in terms of, I can usually when my digital work, that the ink stage or whatever is a little much more fluid. But with pencils, I like to be a little more jagged. But I don't know. I kind of like doing both. Honestly, I can switch back and forth. A lot of people have had trouble kind of dealing with one or the other, making that shift. But for some reason, that particular problem, I never had that particular problem. It kind of came pretty natural to me when I switched over to digital.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why why that is.
Yeah, well, everybody's a little different, which is one of the great things. And you can also over time reevaluate how you use a tool, right? Certainly there are people who have, who I know I've interviewed who've started digitally, and then 10 years later, oh, actually I get a lot out of doing a pencil now, and so we start with that stage, sort of like what you were saying before, and that's really fantastic. That's one of the things I love about the medium of comics. When you're doing your thumbnails, how much time are you thinking about sort of the acting of the scene versus information that you need to communicate? Did that question actually make sense? I don't, sometimes I ask questions and I don't know if they actually make sense.
Yeah, well, I usually kind of think about in staging, just where the characters are and how they're interacting with each other, and also the pacing of the panels. If it's an action scene, everything needs to be moving really fast. Not a lot of dialogue or anything. And then when you want to slow things down, you can have more dialogue and have more panels on the page, just kind of slow down the reader a little bit. And I try to keep those things in mind. And also a big thing is just making sure everything is flowing in the right direction. You have that kind of the 180 rule where you have the camera on the right on one side of the characters, and you try to keep it that way so it doesn't confuse the reader, where characters are flying in different directions from panel to panel. It gets very confusing. So I kind of keep those things in mind. But yeah, when I'm doing the thumbnails, I'm mainly just concerned with that and just kind of figuring out what expressions, what emotions I need to show in this panel or whatever. But then one of the first things I do when I scan it into a computer is I immediately kind of put the dialogue and speech bubbles in there just to kind of know where that stuff is, so I know. Because trying to put speech bubbles in later is usually a train wreck for me because I never make room for them. So I learned to do that really quick now. So, and I'm always tweaking the dialogue as we go.
Sure.
I'm never satisfied with it, so I'm always changing it right up to the end. But as long as it's in the right place and it kind of gets the main point across, it's fine. At the beginning.
In the lettering stage, is this font your handwriting, or is this a commercial font?
It's commercial. Yeah. It's kind of an older one. It's kind of hard to find, but yeah, I use that. And I thought about doing. I might do my own font pretty soon, but we'll see. Handwriting is definitely not one of my strong points. I'm terrible at that.
Well, you've got a fine enough line when it comes to drawing, so I can't imagine that you shouldn't be able to do both.
I cannot write at
all. How often do you think about the page turn and about how the eye flows through the page to get you to the next one?
Yeah, I try to do that. I guess the kind of the way I think about it is like the page. Each page is like a story beat, right? And usually I'll end it with like a kind of a cliffhanger is kind of a strong word, but something, to get the person to turn the other page. Usually don't want to have the kind of finale of that story beat in the middle of the page or something, that's usually, it's not as interesting. And there's some kind of like big reveal. Sometimes you want to like time it where it's just where you turn the page over and you see that big shot, the big splash page or whatever.
Yeah.
So I put a lot of, I put a pretty good amount of thought into that about the
yeah. Well, no, I mean the story is definitely propulsive, so that that works a lot. So this was a web comic first, yeah.
Yeah. When I initially started, I started as a webcomic, just to kind of see if anybody would be interested. I didn't know if this was going to work at all. So I was like, well, I'll just throw it up there for free. And if people really responded to it really quickly. And I did that for about 30, 40 pages. And then I launched a Kickstarter for kind of the first, that book is actually $3 in one. And, I did a Kickstarter for the first book with like the first 100 pages of that book.
Uh-huh.
And it was a big success. So I just kept going with it. And I just kept with the webcomic, just kept doing that. And that's how I really built an audience, was just through the webcomic.
Yeah.
And just
how many readers did you peak at?
I don't really know. I mean, it's sold a few thousand, but I'm not sure of the exact numbers. Oh, as far as the webcomic.
The webcomic. Yeah. You should know views, right?
Yeah, but I kind of stopped looking at it. I was always confused. I have Google Analytics on there, and I have no idea how to read that stuff. But yeah, I think it's had about 1 million or so hits.
Wow.
So
wow.
It took a while.
That's pretty big. That's pretty big.
Yeah, as long as you're posting, you make a schedule and you just post when you say you are. Even though I was late a few days, but
right.
You can build it where you can really build an audience that way.
And how many pages were you doing a week?
2 pages. I would post 2 pages a week.
Wow. Okay.
But I had built up about 30 or 40 pages kind of first before I started posting.
Yeah.
I did like the first episode or whatever before I ever started posting it. That way, it kind of slowed down over time, but I was able to keep posting things regularly because I had that backlog. So.
Yeah. So you said earlier that you had done the first 100 or so pages in thumbnails, the first third approximately. When you got up to the point where you had already done the work, as it were, and you had to start the next section and sort of thumbnail out, I don't know, at that point, did you thumbnail the next 100, or did you just start going kind of 2 pages at a time?
It was usually like the 30 pages or so, I would just do that, or maybe a few scenes. I would usually take it by scenes.
Yeah.
Or I was kind of thinking in my head that you can actually break the comic down into like, individual comic book issues, floppy issues. It's about, most of them are about 23 pages, the parts in them, but a few are like longer. But that's how I would generally do it. After that, I would just start just taking it issue by issue.
That makes a lot of sense. And so you were thinking of it as issues then?
Yeah, that's kind of how I was thinking about it. I wasn't really sure exactly at what format I wanted to get it printed in or whatever. It didn't really matter to me, but I was like, this sounds like a good idea, or something I can kind of keep in my head and organize,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's smart. That's really good. Yeah, I didn't go through and count. I should have done that. Because I can see when I look at each part. Yep, that's about the same as that, and that one's about the same as that. That's cool. I hadn't realized that. I read the book and I hadn't realized that.
Yeah, I try to keep it like a somewhat self-contained story, within each 23 things, but it's
and so am I then inferring that it actually takes you roughly 3 days a page to do all the painting and all the finishing to get it ready?
Yeah, that's about right. But kind of when I was kind of getting to the end of each sort of third of the book, I would kind of go back and edit things, and that might add a day per page or something. But because I was constantly tweaking things even after I finished it. But yeah, I had gotten it down to about two pages a week. Sometimes I could do more, but that was rare. Usually with some of the like more dialogue heavy scenes or whatever, I could usually knock those out pretty fast. But the big action stuff would take longer. Sometimes I'd only do a page a week, but generally about two pages a week.
Yeah. And when you needed to do the Kickstarters, I suppose, did that slow down your production because you had to worry about fulfillment and things like that as well?
Yeah.
Or did you have someone else to help you with that?
No, I pretty much did it all myself, but yeah, I took breaks in between the books just to kind of deal with all the fulfillment stuff. Well, I had a guy, he was kind of he's sort of like a middleman between me and the printer and the stuff like that. And then I also had somebody else ship it. So I tried to offload as much work as I could to other people. And but still, it's a lot of work kind of keeping up with all those addresses and customer service and things like that,
Yeah.
But luckily for me, it all kind of worked out and everybody got their books. So I'm pretty happy about that.
That's nice. So how did you start working with Skybound then? Did they see it and come to you? Did you go to them? How did that part work?
Once I'd finished all three and I kind of had the whole story, I was approached by another publisher, I think a couple of other publishers, and they had sent me, they'd shown some interest, and so I started looking for an agent and kind of doing all that stuff, and got an agent, and we started just kind of shopping it around then, just to kind of see if maybe we could find a better deal or arrangement or whatever. Yeah. And I think that's how we kind of discovered Image or Skybound.
Yeah.
And they were great, man. They were just really cool. They liked the story, and they wanted to, they weren't out like asking for changes or we want to do it this way or whatever. And some of the other and they were cool with rights issues and things like that. And some of the other publishers were like, they want everything. They want your firstborn, and and they want, can you change this? Can you change that? But Skybound was really cool, and they were cool to work with. So
yeah, no changes at all, or was there anything that they're like?
The first. The first few books is minor, but the first few books, the font was too small, so I had to actually go back and letter all of those first three parts of the book. which was kind of a pain, but it was worth it, because it now it looks a lot cleaner.
Sure.
But yeah, other than that, it's pretty much exactly how it looks. Oh,
Yeah.
we also did a new cover for it. So
yeah. The one of the things that really struck me about this book, and actually almost made me nervous for picking it for the kids club, is how scary the real world environment is, right? Like, cats are terrifying in this. The mice are all cute and darling, but birds and cats and predators are predatory in a way. You want to talk about that maybe a little bit?
A lot of people ask me if it's like okay for kids, and I've never had any complaints from parents or anything where it's like, oh, this is too much or whatever. Some people are like, it's a middle grade book it's considered a middle grade book. Middle grade to young adult, I guess. It's kind of in this kind of middle area, and I think it's fine. Like I said, I was kind of basing it on sort of animated movies and things, and there's no like gore, cursing or anything like that. Some kids might be it might be a little too much for some, I'm sure, but I think for the most part, it seems to be, like I said, nobody's ever really come back and said this wasn't inappropriate or whatever. So
yeah,
and that's kind of the way I'd always wanted it to be, is where it's more kind of creepy or maybe intense or something, but not like a horror movie or something.
Sure. Like, what's your own personal relationship with animals, like cats and birds and things? I mean, did they scare you?
No, people ask me if I hate cats and dogs. I'm like, no, I have a dog. He's like, he just turned 14, so he's getting up there. But yeah, I've always been a fan of pets. But yeah, to a mouse, most of them aren't too friendly. And I've lived in some mouse infested houses and stuff before too, so I have a bit of a history with those too. But
yeah, well, real mouse don't look as cute as these guys. It's interesting to me that, and you may disagree with this, but it feels to me like the mice are anthropomorphized, but the rest of the animals aren't. And which anthropomorphized for the kids, any kids watching this, is when you look at something that's not human and you think of it as human. And so the mice are really cute, and their body language is more human-like than mouse-like, I would say broadly. But when you see the cats or the birds or the snakes, they're like cats and birds and snakes. So I guess my question, if there is, I should have a question in there probably somewhere, is what? So was that conscious? And if so, how do you deal with sort of the tension between cute cartoony and scary realistic?
Yeah, it was definitely conscious, because to tell a good story, you kind of need characters that are capable of expressing, showing emotions and expressions and somewhat human looks to them. It kind of, some of the earlier pages, the mice are more realistic, I would say, but I'd kind of gone back and kind of added more of a kind of traditional animated kind of anthropomorphized look to them. Whereas the kind of the bigger animals, they do talk in the book, but they usually don't have as much, expressive range or whatever. So, and part of that was practical too, is I really wasn't drawing all these different animals. I don't have a huge amount of experience drawing all these. I was kind of relying on reference a little more for those. so they would be a little more realistic. But I also like that. I guess a big sort of not theme, but thing about the book is that it is these cutesy little animals in this kind of terrifying world of kind of like monsters. But I like to show that, just to kind of, I don't know, it's interesting to me. I don't know why, but it is. I don't know why.
No,
but
that's
kind of an interesting.
Yeah. No, that's 100% fine. So we were talking about reference. Are you watching like a lot of nature documentaries, or like where are you getting some of the animal reference from?
Yeah, I watch a lot of like YouTube videos of animals and stuff like that. Everything from grizzly bears to wolves to cats, you name it. I'm always watching stuff like that just to kind of figure out how I can kind of integrate some of this stuff in, not just visually, but also, story wise.
Do you screen capture like a specific frame, or are you just sort of synthesizing it after watching?
Yeah, I don't want it to be like too like photoreal or whatever, where I'm just like copying images, like still shots or whatever. So I would generally try to avoid that. I would do like studies of animal photographs or whatever, but when I got into the comic book itself, I didn't want to do that. So I kind of developed I'd watched a lot of videos on, how to draw animal videos and stuff from like, I forget his name, Aaron Blaze. I think he did like a lot of Lion King stuff, and I kind of watched some stuff from him about like how to construct animal bodies and how to make more dynamic drawings of animals without relying on reference. So that's kind of the approach I took, But, sometimes I get stuck and I'll just look at reference to just kind of figure out what's going on with this particular animal, But I tried to avoid, I tried to do it as much as I could from memory and things like that. So
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Let me throw out to anybody who's watching, because I know we've got a few people watching. If you do have any questions, put them in the chat over there. Oh, and Zoe says we have one, which let's go up. From the Comics Appreciation Project. How long did it take to make this book? From Jack, who's age 10. Hello, Jack.
Hello. It took a while. I think, well, including the Kickstarters, it took about 5 years, but without those, the actual comic book stuff, it took about 4. But I was trying to pace myself and take it one day at a time, because it's a pretty thick book. So
it is a very thick book. Yeah.
Yeah. If I tried to do it all, could try to take it all in at once, it's just maybe too much for me. So I'll just take it in chunks. So, but yeah, it ended up taking a while to kind of tell the whole story.
Mm-hmm. And the prequel is at the back? Is that just for this edition, or was that also in the?
It was in it first appeared in a Skybound number 25. Is a kind of an anthology thing. There were several comics kind of introduced in that one, and that's what I'd done it for, and then we added it to this too. So.
Yeah. What? Why did you put the prequel at the back of the book?
It's not real. Well, I guess it's a prequel. It happens before, but it's not really related to the rest of the story so much. It's more of kind of like an intro, I guess. I put it in the beginning originally, but then it kind of has some similarities with some of the stuff that happens at the beginning of the book, and I was like, they're just kind of reading the same thing twice, at least the first couple of pages. So we kind of just moved it to the back, and it's just kind of a standalone story, really. It was kind of a story. It was a story I had in my head for a long time, but we kind of altered it to be a bit of a prequel, or a bit of, it's more of an introduction to Scurry, I guess.
Yeah.
Since it already kind of existed for that in the comic, the Skybound book, we're like, well, we can throw it in and then with this book too, just to kind of give a little bonus for people.
Yeah.
Especially that own the original 3 books. So it's like, here's a little something extra for you.
Yeah. See, it's the mysteries of comics publishing.
Yeah.
So I guess to follow up on Jack's question, did you know that this was going to take you 4 years to draw and then another year to handle the business side of it, I guess? Did you realize that going in first? And answer that one first, and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, I think so. I tried not to think about it too much. Like I said, it's not good insane trying to think about it. Yeah, I mean, when I got into it, I was just like, it's going to take as long as it's going to take, and it's what I want to do anyway. So, I mean, it can take forever for all I care.
Right.
So that's kind of how
a healthy attitude to have.
Yeah. And, I plan on adding more books in the future. So it's an ongoing thing. But, yeah, I knew it was going to take a long time because it's like, fully painted and everything.
Yeah.
It's a little slower, but I'm trying to get faster at it. We'll see how they get.
Are you doing comics full time, or are you juggling a day job too?
Well, for most of the time I was doing this book, I was just doing the book. That's all I was doing. But I was a concept artist for video games before I started doing this, and I've kind of picked up some of that stuff too, and I kind of do that on the side. I guess a day job, but it's more of like a supervisory. Like I'm working with other artists to kind of just kind of getting feedback and stuff like that, and that kind of gives me a little kind of time to do my own stuff.
Yeah.
Where I'm not so exhausted from drawing all day at the day job, and then I have to come home and draw my comic.
Yeah.
This is a little. I enjoyed doing that. I like working with other artists. It's really fun, and I've really learned a lot about how to analyze other art and try to figure out what's working, what's not working, both in their art and in my own. So it's been really useful.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you said that the intention is to keep going with SCURRY. Are you going to follow a similar model that you did to this in terms of giving it for free on the internet, doing a Kickstarter, and then picking it up? Or are you going to go to a more published model? Like, is maybe Skybound going to do the next volume as a comic book?
I'm probably going to still do the Kickstarter stuff. The last few years has been kind of hard to do. A lot of like shipping costs have gone up like insanely.
I know.
But yeah, I plan on still doing that, and then once I have enough of the stories to make another book like this, I would love to get it published through traditional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the plan, roughly. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, as far as the webcomic, yeah, I'll probably still post it online. It's been in a kind of hiatus for a bit, but yeah, I can't wait to start posting stuff again.
But since you're already thinking about these things in terms of essentially periodical print length, don't you have the interest to find out like if it would work as a comic? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess yeah, as long as the quality, the printing quality and everything was really top notch, it doesn't really matter to me how it's printed. But yeah, I mean, like I said, they're already kind of in comic book size chunks, so we can totally do that.
Yeah, because if you're doing 2 pages a week, it'll take you 11 weeks, so it would have to be quarterly. Let's say a quarterly comic. I could see it. I could see it if they're relatively self-contained stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
maybe we could, like I did with the first book, is kind of work on probably at least one issue before we, or maybe do like 2 issues before we started kind of releasing them to the public. That'd be cool.
Sure.
That way, have a little padding.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very smart thing to do, and something that a lot of people don't do, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Skybound hasn't come to you and said we do this as a comic book? No, probably not.
No, we've just been kind of focusing on this stuff so far.
Yeah.
They know I'm working on some new stuff, so we'll see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's cool seeing my book in actual comic book stores and things like that. Or even like just bookstores like Barnes and Noble. So that's something you don't get when you're doing Kickstarter.
There's a wall from behind us,
Yeah.
So are you working on anything else other than more Scurry?
Well, I'm sort of writing other stories. There's a lot of stories I want to tell, and I usually kind of play around with them or I'll write with them and I'll design characters and stuff for them. But I haven't started any actual graphic design, graphic novel work on them yet. But I do plan on doing that hopefully in the future sometime. we'll see when I have time for it. Yeah. But there's definitely other stuff I want to do.
You were talking at the top about having a science fiction idea, I think it was. And I wonder if now that you've got this out from under your belt, that gives you room in your head to start developing that science fiction idea, for example.
Yeah, that's kind of the way it was. I was originally going to just do this book and then move on to something else, but then I started thinking about other scurry stories in my head. I was like, well, that would actually be pretty cool to work on too. So we'll see if I can do both. We'll see if I can work. I kind of want to keep the scurry thing going, and also maybe possibly other illustrators to kind of help me out with that. On different little one shots and things like that. So it'd be really cool if I could do that.
That makes sense. No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm told we have another question, so let's pop that up. Hey, it's Jack again. Hello, Jack again. Was there a person in life that inspired you to be a creator?
Well, my mom's always been kind of creative. She does a lot of stuff like, she does all kinds of stuff, arts and crafts and clothing and all this kind of thing. So she's pretty artistic. My dad always built, my dad built our first house pretty much from scratch. So he knows how to actually do the physical things. I don't. Besides my parents, there's a lot of those early image guys were a huge influence. There's tons of, like Jim Lee and all that. And then there's Mike Mignola, Joe Madureira, who I got to work with his game studio. I worked there for a while. That was really cool to kind of. We were working with. There were so many creative artists. It was a very kind of art-centric kind of game studio, and there was so many awesome artists there that I really learned a ton of stuff there once I got into it. But yeah, there's so many people, like all these like great like concept artists on ArtStation and things like that are just like blowing me away every day. So it's kind of just there's so many. I'm just trying to keep up.
What did your parents say when you told them that you wanted to do a comic about mice?
Oh, they were cool. I don't think they really knew what I was doing. I was like, yeah, I'm doing a comic. I kind of moved off to the Pacific Northwest in an attempt to. I was trying to live in a place that was kind of cheap enough that I could do this full time.
Sure.
I was living in California at the time. It was really expensive, but I was like, I really want to do this, and I think I could do something with it, and it worked out. So but they were cool. They've always been cool about I can do whatever I want to do. They've always been behind me about it. So they were always kind of a little worried, like obviously being an artist can be a kind of tough road sometimes.
Right.
They're like, "Are you good at a real job?" But I just kind of kept doing it. But they never really dissuaded me or anything. They were just kind of curious, wondering. I'm sure they were nervous about it, but I just kind of kept doing it. I don't know how to do anything else, so so it eventually worked out.
Yeah. And I'm sure that like once you finally had the book, that makes a difference, right? Like they can see that it's real and that it exists and that it's people are giving you money for it,
Yeah, it's surprised even me.
Yeah, it's got to be a great feeling though, right? Though to put all of this time and all this energy to put years of your life into creating something and then, you finally have a solid, it's got a shiny gold logo. It's it looks cool. It looks great, man.
Yeah, it was definitely a big deal. I think whenever I got the anytime you get the final thing in and all the pages are in order or nothing's been screwed up. It's really more about almost like a sigh of relief than
Yeah.
exhilaration. It's like,
Yeah.
oh thank God it worked. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's great. I'm told there is one more question, so let's see what we got from Aaron Sound. Has anyone, Leica, Pixar, etc., approached you about adapting Scurry for the screen?
I get a few things here and there from like producers and things. We're kind of talking about it here and there, but I haven't really. Um, I guess I haven't really like searched it out for it yet, Um, but yeah, Leica is one of my favorite movie studios. That'd be awesome if they wanted to do something. I know Pixar; they write their own stuff, so I don't see that ever happening. But it'd be cool. It would definitely be cool. It's definitely kind of that cinematic kind of look to it. So
Yeah.
I guess I see it as a movie in my head, but I'm not overly worried about it. If it happens, great.
Yeah.
It's kind of like winning the lottery to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And you already won the first lottery. The first lottery is getting the book done, right? That's so hard to do to get a whole book done.
Yes,
And then if you get the second lottery, then that's great. And if you don't, you still got the book. That's how I think about it.
It's all bonus to me, like whatever. I know people are interested in the book, and I've had really positive feedback about it. So that's cool to me, as long as people like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you hearing a lot from kids about it, or like are you talking to
kids,
schools?
parents?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just emails and stuff mostly, or
Right.
hey, we learned the book. My kid can't keep it down. We can't put it down. So that's always really nice. It's not something I really thought about when I was making the comic. I figured it would just be kind of thrown into the abyss. Once you put it out there, you don't know if anybody would care or not. But I was just I guess I was kind of making it for an audience of one, So as long as I liked it, I kind of believed in it. And then when other people started kind of responding to it, I was like, oh, that's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of kids love it and stuff. So that's always really nice.
Nice. And we got one more question, I'm told. Hey, it's Hank this time. Hello, Hank, age 8. Since you did everything, what was the hardest part of making the book for you? That's a good question. That's a really good question, Hank. You could take over my job soon.
That's a good question. I guess the initial, like, kind of roughing in everything that's kind of the phase that kind of takes the most work and or brain power to kind of get everything laid out right. And I'll kind of constantly redo that over and over again. But once I get past that, and once I kind of have everything in place, the actual painting stuff, it takes a while. It's just kind of work intensive, but it's not really. It doesn't take a lot of brain power. I can kind of turn my brain off and just kind of paint, But yeah, the initial figuring out where everything is and trying to get the expressions right and everything, that's probably the longest part. Yeah, I guess that's probably the.
Did you have anybody like not editing you exactly, but like reading your drafts and going, yeah, this is going in the right direction, or conversely, like, oh, what happened to this thing on page 5 that you never talked about again?
That was kind of what the webcomic was for. I was kind of like the audience was kind of my editor.
Your editor. Okay, that's fair. That's a fair point. Yeah.
That was another reason I kind of did the webcomic. I was like, I figured they can, like, if somebody finds a mistake, they're going to tell me. They're like, here's a typo or whatever. So I kind of fixed all that. I think for the most part, people were. The story was pretty easy to follow for most people, so I didn't have a lot of things, but there would always be some little problem or whatever. I would kind of go back after I'd posted something. I'd be like, this needs another panel or something on this page, to kind of clarify something. So yeah, the audience kind of became sort of a participant in how the comic looked and everything. So
that's really interesting.
Yeah, if something wasn't too clear, I could usually go back and that's repaint it or something if I had to.
Yeah. Was there? I'm assuming the answer is no, but have you had a situation where the audience pointed something out and you had to make like a wholesale change as opposed to just a panel here or there?
No, I don't think so. I think for the most part, I can't remember if I ran. I don't think I'd read the initial story through anybody, but I thought it made enough sense. So when I put it online, I was kind of worried if people are going to get it, people are going to understand what I'm trying to do. And for the most part, it was. I didn't have any real problems. I didn't have to add any pages or anything. Sometimes I'd flip a panel over or something, but that was about it. Some of the dialogue I would have to change, or something if it wasn't clear, but. As far as the painting goes, usually I don't think I added anything too major. I don't think I added any pages.
Sure. Well, it's because you put in all that brain time at the beginning to do the right. The more you solve most of the problems then.
Yeah, you really want to solve the problems early on, so when you're painting stuff, you don't have to just redo all that work. So.
Yeah. So, do we have a time frame for when there might be more Scurry?
Well, it's been such a hectic year. I've been kind of moving around, but I'm hoping to have something ready by early next year, and I'm probably going to start posting stuff on the website a little earlier than that. Mm-hmm. Probably. Maybe in the fall, hopefully, something like that. I've already started on the newer book, but I just kind of want to build up a backlog before I can start posting them again. But hopefully, sometime in the second half of this year, I hope to start posting again and have a new book ready by early next year.
Nice.
And then after that, I think it's going to start going a little faster because I'm going to have more of a system down. Things will settle down. So
yeah, well, that's great. I mean, I'm sure I speak for most of the people watching. We would love to see more. This is it's quite a piece of work, man, and I think you should be really proud and really happy with this. So let's sort of do the wrap up here. And my last question is always the same as my first question. It's not why comics, but it's a different question. I always do have the same question, is what I mean to say. But that question is that a lot of people are, because this is a series of interviews, a lot of people watch these who want to make comics of their own. And what I hear a lot of times is they just don't know how to start. They don't know, like, if they're good enough. So I'm especially curious about your answer because you talked about being self-taught in this, about being self-motivated. So what's that a piece of advice that you would give that person who wants to make comics, but they're just not sure that they have it?
Well, I would say just try it out. Just you got to kind of jump in there and just do it. But don't put this big deadline on your lap. Where you have to where it becomes work. Just have fun with it and don't try to you know just try to enjoy it. Like I said, I made this comic for myself just to kind of see if I could do it and just to see if I would enjoy it. So just kind of make the work that you enjoy, and it's so much easier if you're trying to impress other people or trying to match some cool style or whatever because you think it'll sell. You're gonna be miserable trying to do it. So if you just do what the thing that you actually want to make, that's the way I would. That's the only way I can stay motivated if I'm doing it for me.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense to me, man. That's a smart answer. I want to really thank you for coming here and taking the time and talking to us today.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I hope you had fun.
Yeah,
And
nice.
yeah, and this is a well crafted book, and I think it's great for kids. So thank you for making this. Zoe, put me on a 1, and let me do a little housekeeping and wrap up here before we go back to Mac. So if you are sitting at home, as so many of you are, even still this long into the pandemic, I know there's still a lot of people sitting at home. If you want somebody to read, good book. It's gorgeous. Did you look at the inside of the art? It's like fully painted. It's beautiful. It's really, really a nice looking book. It's really swell. So thoroughly recommended. I think we got everything set up so that as you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link to buy it somewhere on the screen or on the side or something. We can't see it in our interface because that's not what we got, but that should be there. And so you could press that button and buy it, or you could go to comicsexperience.the Shopify thing that's been up on the screen a couple times. Anyway, I'm really not very good at this part of the show. I'm sorry. I do want to say what our next shows are. The next show for the Kids Club will be a book called Parachute Kids. This is a really interesting book. It's a book about coming to this country and not being here legally and being a kid. And I think that a lot of you are going to get a lot out of this. This is a very interesting book. So that, and we're going to be talking to Betty Tang about this in the next Kids Club, which is in about a month. And then the Danger's not. Is Danger next? No, not Danger isn't next. Danger is next for the Bell of the Ball. Will you grab me a copy? I'm sorry. I grabbed the wrong book. 2 books from now, we're going to be doing this for the Adult Club. Danger and Other Unknown Risks with Ryan North and Erica Anderson. So you've got a big advance notice that. But next Sunday, we're talking to Mary Costa for Bell of the Ball, the pinkest comic book that you have ever seen in your life. Boy, is this comic pink. So those are the upcoming shows. In the meantime, I want to make a couple thanks here. I want to thank Zoe for running the show today, stepping in at the last minute and helping out here and doing a really good job at it too. I want to thank Jordan, our producer, who does all the backstage stuff at home that you don't see, but we wouldn't have a show without. I want to thank the staff, the aforementioned Zoe, Kat, and Katie, who keep the store running and allow me to sit around and interview cartoonists. I want to thank all the members of the club because this wouldn't exist without you. Please join the club. It's great. If you just like watching the interviews, I mean, you don't have to buy the books. We like if you buy the books because that's how we stay in business. But, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. You know how that stuff works. And most importantly, we couldn't do this without cartoonists like Mac right there. Put me back on the 2. Oh, There we go. Hi. So thank you, Mac, for making comics, because we wouldn't be able to do any of this without this. And we love being able to share great comics like Scurry. So
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah. All right. We will see you all next week, perhaps, but next month at the very worst. So thank you. Thanks very much for watching this episode of the Kids Graphic Novel of the Month Club. If you enjoyed what you were seeing, please subscribe and hit the bell up in the corner. We'd like to invite you to join the club. Every month you'll get a great new book curated by our staff, and it's a fantastic program. So please join. That address is running along the bottom right now. Thanks very much.